From deep in the Burbank Media District, it's time for another edition of myBurbank Talks, presented by the staff of myBurbank. Now, let's see what's on today's agenda as we join our program.
Hey, everybody. Craig Sherwood here, along with Ross Benson. How you doing, Ross?
I'm all together.
Okay.
We have a song like that? All together now. Oh.
We have a special guest today. Mayor Konstantine Anthony is with us in a special issue episode we're doing today. Mayor, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. Thanks for having me back.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate you coming in. I know this has been a tough week for you.
Yeah.
To give a little background here, and to also preface this, we've asked that the mayor agreed to come on the show, and I told him no questions were off the we could do anything we wanted to ask, and that he would not see the questions in advance. So I want to make sure this is fair for everybody, but he also has a chance to have his point of view said, which I think is very important to have a forum like that for him, because he deserves that. Everybody deserves to be heard.
Thank you, Craig. I appreciate that.
So basically what happened was last Sunday,
Last Saturday.
there was a fundraiser, and somebody posted a video of you being spanked by a drag queen at, I think at a bingo event, a fundraiser. And I got to tell you, I first saw that on Sunday, and I go, oh boy, he probably messed up on that one a little bit, but it didn't bother me that much at first. I'm just thinking, okay, probably shouldn't have done that. And then on Monday, I look at your Twitter, and you change your name from Mayor Konstantine Anthony to Mayor Spanky. Now I'm saying to myself, well, if that was an unfortunate situation, he just kind of doubled down on it right now. Well, let's see how the council meeting goes. And I said, you know what? I want to give him a chance to explain. And as a lifelong citizen of Burbank, I'm a little bit, it's not the publicity I want to see, because, of course, it goes viral, and every right-wing Republican side all of a sudden takes off on it and starts attacking Burbank and everything else, and not knowing the background of it. So I really didn't hear an apology when you spoke on Tuesday night. That kind of bothered me a little bit. I think you owe an apology to a point as the mayor of Burbank. I know you didn't represent yourself as Burbank mayor that night, but you still have it goes with your, it's like being a doctor. Wherever you go, you're a doctor, So that was my take on it then, but I still, like I say, I think it's important for you to have your say so. So, Ross, you have anything before we start?
No, that was not the first question.
No, that was not the
That's Craig's.
That's more of me ranting for a second.
Yeah.
But if I know it kind of has shocked a lot of people. A lot of repercussions from it, which we'll let you explain here in a bit. And our Twitter feed lit up. My personal
I saw.
Twitter feed fed up. People text me and so forth. And let's just jump into your questions.
Yeah. And I'll be honest. To me, it was not a story, because it wasn't really to me a Burbank situation until it came at the council meeting. Then it became a Burbank story for me. That's how I looked at it.
I can appreciate that. Yeah.
So, okay. So to start with, explain what the function was, where it was at, why you were there, and what were the activities that took place during the evening.
Yeah. So it was in Santa Clarita. It was at a private sort of a country club, part of a park. You had to be a member, kind of thing. So it was not open to the public. No children were there. I think that was one of the big things that sort of got the steamroll.
Okay, and not to interrupt you, but there were reports of children being there.
Right.
And, so there were no children there at all? I mean...
No, I think the original...
Nobody under 18 was there?
No one under 18. And they checked IDs at the door, and, because it was, it's bingo, and there's alcohol, so there's gambling and drinking, so they want to check and make sure who's there. But yeah, no one under 18 was present. And that was that specific point of information was key for me, because I think what was happening in the room was totally fine for adults. I think it was fun and hilarious in the room, but I didn't think it was appropriate for kids. And so I felt comfortable being present there because there were no children.
And I just quick question, including your son?
Yeah, no, my son was with the babysitter, and yeah, no.
Okay.
And I think one of the reasons, and this is just a side note, I think one of the reasons why it got so viral was this misconception that there were kids present. And a lot of people jumped on that, and I got a lot of flack for, having done what I did in front of kids. And most of the people I talked to who reached out to me directly, when I explained to them, like, no, it was adults only, then the next thing they would say is, well, you shouldn't be doing this in a public event. And I said, well, it was actually a private event. The public wasn't invited. And then they turn around and say, well, okay, I guess the mayor shouldn't be doing that anyways. I'm like, okay, fair enough. I'll take that criticism.
Because one person on Twitter says, "Oh, he did this in front of kids," which of course was not true. But because one person says it on the internet, it becomes a fact immediately.
Right. And one of the major problems we had is that the account, the Twitter account that originally shared it, had a huge following. They're very well known. They have a lot of likes and shares, and so when they say something, their whole following takes it as gospel, and suddenly it's taken off and it's got a life of its own. But that being said, that's what happened on the internet. The actual event itself was pretty tame. A number of people who were there all participated in the event. I think if you go...
Was this a fundraiser for you or just for
No.
a number of candidates or...
So it's a local party organization up in Santa Clarita. They were just raising money for future elections, and they're for their prospective candidates. So I was only there participating and enjoying the crowd and talking to folks and just, being my regular jovial self, hanging out.
Getting out to the public where potential voters down the line.
Yeah, exactly.
Getting known.
Exactly. And so a number of folks had done exactly what you saw me do in the video. There's actually some footage on the person who was hosting the event posted a number of videos to their page, and you see a bunch of people participating in the spankings and the laughing, and it's a whole thing. I think I got singled out because of my position and very vocal position on LGBTQ issues. And
real quick question for you, Mayor. I've never been to bingo or
drag queen bingo.
I've been invited many times.
Yes.
I know a lot of groups that have put it on as a fundraiser. People have asked me, "Oh, would you?"
You'd be natural there, Ross.
Well, that's what people have said to me, but so I have not attended. So, is the paddling or whatever, the song that that they were playing, that is kind of common?
Yeah, so basically the premise is if you call a bingo and your card doesn't match, if you're missing one or something, then you get a punishment. Like that's... So you play, and there's always a different rule. It's not just straight bingo every time. They change it up. They try to confuse you. So it's like you got to get 4 in a row this time, or you got to get all the corners. Or, they mix it up. And it's hard to keep track. So people mess up, and that's like... the consequences of messing up.
And it looks like, in all honesty, it looks like a lighthearted moment. She walked over, I'm not sure, who it was, and, but the person walked over and gave you just 2 small little taps that weren't even...
It was only one. It was only one, actually. Yeah,
okay, so I guess the video made it look as though there's more... Okay.
They looped it, so yeah.
Oh, okay, which,
I think they did that to go with the song.
Yes.
Probably did. So, it didn't look like it was anything... No one didn't look at anything sexual or didn't look at anything, that was... in any inappropriate, the fact that Mayor Burbank. Now, without giving names, were there any other politicians there?
There were. None of them got up to do what I did. But then again, I'm a little different.
Well, yeah. I've had a little more experience in dealing with, fallout.
Yeah. I'm also, just me and my personality is very different than most politicians. Your average politician, they're legislators or lawyers or, public servants. I was an actor and a comedian for 20 years before I got this job. I did live comedy, and I've done the most ridiculous stuff ever. And a lot of it is on social media. And I tell people all the time, I'm like, I have done silly stuff as the mayor for 8 months. At the Dunkin' Donuts opening, you can go on my Instagram and you see me. I'm trying to drink the mascot, like the mascot of Dunky. He's the cuppy or whatever. I'm trying to drink, like I do silly things.
Was that a Ross Benson pose picture?
No, well, Duncan was. I did want Duncan the cup in the shot,
Right.
but again, when you bring a big character like that,
Right.
and I've done other ribbon cuttings where
Yeah, you've done many ribbon cuttings with politicians and asked them to do
something different.
Yeah,
I
different.
had a
and
politician
kind of
once
fun.
take a scoop at 31 Flavors and lick it.
Yeah.
Lick the scoop, even though I didn't, but the manager's eyes were like this big. And almost as a photographer, you got to do something different or it's going to be the regular old ribbon cutting.
And that's not me. I'm not regular old, politician. I'm a very different entity. But I want to circle back around to my position on LGBTQ issues. I firmly believe that if the exact same video had come out and it was a cisgendered beauty queen or a man dressed up like Santa Claus telling me I, was naughty for the year, like nobody would have shared it. They would have thought, "Oh, the mayor's doing something silly. That's goofy." I think that the reason it got shared is because of who it was doing the spanking. A drag queen is typically a man dressed as a woman and wearing all of the dressings and the makeup and all, and being very flamboyant about it. And the fact that I simply participated in it and was comfortable with it, I think that's the reason why it got spread so far so quickly. And your earlier point about why there was no apology on Tuesday. If this was any other issue, if I had said someone's name wrong or spilled something and ruined something or, did some other egregious offense to a dignitary or some other public event or any in that way, obviously, I would lean into an apology and I would talk about what I'm going to do to be better. I think there's a part of me that is refusing to apologize for this because that would give credence to the complaint. I have taken a very hard stance against not apologizing for my actions to point out the wild hypocrisy that is being thrown our way. Because I've gotten so many emails where one email will say, "Hey, this is very undignified. I don't think the mayor should be participating." And the very next email from a totally different person will be filled with vitriol and hate and the kind of language that you would see scratched into a bathroom stall, like horrible stuff. And so how can I look at these two messages and say, well, okay, I'm going to apologize to this one person publicly, but I'm not going to apologize to the other person who doesn't deserve it. And it doesn't jive for me. And I know that's not what people wanted to hear. I know that changing my Twitter handle and making jokes about it is not necessarily becoming of a mayor.
So what was the reason you changed your handle to Mayor Spanky? What was behind that?
So for me, it's about accepting the reality of what everyone has seen now. It's about taking it on and not letting the anger and the vitriol change who I am. There's a style of dealing with attacks where you don't go on the defensive, you lean into it. And a lot of what I have seen in previous months, Burbank, Glendale, North Hollywood, around the Southern California area and really around the country is a full-blown attack on trans, gay, and bisexual and lesbians who are just living their lives. And now politicians have to come in and they're doing lawsuits and they're writing bills and they're attacking each other. And so I participated in what I believed was a very harmful event. When I became the focus of this very specific attack, separate from what we see as the mayor and the duties and the pomp and circumstance, that I totally understand that. And I can appreciate that. And I think I said so much on Tuesday night. I understood that there's a level of that, and I get it. But the other issue is eclipsing all of that. There is a concerted effort right now in this country to normalize that kind of hate. I don't know if I did it the right way. I don't know if, my actions.
Unproven ground for you. I mean, but
Yeah.
I also understand what you're saying, and it's a huge issue. The way same thing as racism. I think racism is very similar to what's going on with with that community.
And in the same way that I'm not black and I don't know how to deal with that kind of hate coming at me. I'm not gay and I'm not trans either. So I'm still trying to figure out how to deal with that as well. So I'm stuck in this position of trying to be a good ally who is not necessarily being oppressed. And I don't know. I am still learning. I'm still figuring it out.
Well, as it sounds and what I've seen social media wise, it's not all Burbank that are all over you. It's majority of people outside
Oh yeah.
are 17.7 square miles.
Yes.
And that is, we learned there are people that will clip onto this from around the world. I think that's why it might have been aired in Australia, aired all over.
But I think it's also because Fox, it being, he's a Democrat, Fox is, and we have this division in our country now, which, it's them versus us instead of, so I think Fox is trying to do a gotcha moment to a Democratic person.
Right.
I mean, that's why I took out of, that's why at first I didn't think a lot about it, but then, like I say, it's kind of snowballed.
Right. And so, it's sensationalism. It has nothing to do with policy. And look, Republicans aren't the only ones culpable of this. I know there's Congresswoman Lauren Boebert had some naughty videos leaked, and I saw a bunch of Democrats go online and try to shame her and say, "Hey, you shouldn't be doing this," and "Hey, you're disgusting." And I'm like, people make mistakes.
It's funny. I've had so many people over the years say, "Why don't you run for office? Why don't you get on the committee?" And my reply to them, if I wanted to see a proctologist, I would go to a proctologist. And I know literally when you are in any political office, it has happened in this city. It happens everywhere. People go through council members' trash to find out what toilet paper they use. I mean, that's sad.
Oh, they went back into my Twitter feed and found like old jokes from 2009. And they're like, "Oh my gosh.
That's a common thing nowadays.
How could you possibly say this horrible stuff?" And then like I went back and I looked at it. I'm like, why did I write that? And I searched it and I'm like, that's a totally normal joke for what was happening in the world at that time. And it's like,
Right.
I don't know. It's strange.
Well, we're seeing a lot of people are very hateful of this. And the other half, what's the big deal? I'm really, nobody seems to be in the middle. It seems to be, this is nothing or this is everything. So it's kind of a,
But look, I will say there are a handful of folks in Burbank who are still upset at me. People who have an idea of what the mayor is supposed to do, of how anyone in the office is supposed to behave. And to those folks, I want to say, I am still learning. I have 4 months left. This is my first term in office. It's my first run at being mayor. I tried to learn as best I could. Um, the things that I do when I'm, quote unquote, off the clock. I wasn't in Burbank at the time, and I definitely wasn't performing a function of my duties. Um, I'm still, me. I'm still a silly comedian who happened to get elected to office. But I just want to point out to those folks, take a look at the work that I do when I am on the clock, how I run the meetings, how I host different events, how I welcome dignitaries and other electeds into the city. The, I was commended when I went off script at uh, um, Chief Garcia's retirement and Danny Alvarez being sworn in. That was a very public event, a very important event. And I had individuals who had never met me before thank me for putting those words together. And honestly, the day that the video came out, we were at the 9/11 memorial, and my behavior, I wore a full suit and tie. It was 6 in the morning. I didn't have to do that. Nobody else did that. But I knew it was important. So put on the best dress I could get, the outfit that needed presentation, because I knew I was the mayor and this was an important function. So I understand how it looks, and I understand what pomp and circumstance means. And so when I'm on the clock, I do my best. And I'll challenge anybody to point out when I've ever been flawed. In 8 months, I've taken care of what exactly needs to happen.
Well, we had a couple people send us notes and so forth and what we saw. Now, Tuesday night was, they used to have a dinner for committees and commissioners and so forth. They've, because of Brown Act limitations, I've been told, they didn't want to do that. So they had a reception during, it was weird how the agenda called it. You had closed session, then you had the reception, and
Yeah,
everybody says
It
you
had to be a
weren't there.
public meeting at that point. Yeah, I was not at the meeting.
You weren't at the reception, I guess, when they were
And
honoring.
you missed the closed session also, I heard?
I did miss closed session, yes. There was one item that I needed to be there for that was pulled off.
Right.
So I did not.
'Cause I know they actually pulled off the agenda
Yeah.
when you weren't there in that special meeting, so that's why I was surprised you wouldn't have.
Well, that's the only reason
But you
why.
knew in advance that they
Yeah.
were pulling that item.
Exactly.
Yeah, they
I knew in
knew.
advance. So.
Okay, so you weren't at the commission's dinner, and I know some of your other council members are very upset about that.
Yeah.
It's the only time I know I've watched every time commissioners get put on. You started off as a commissioner, and those commissioners take that real personal.
Yes.
And
yes.
you were not there. You were doing something else.
So 2 things. One, there was another event in Glendale specifically dealing with these LGBT issues. I was invited to attend and participate. And second, because of all of the fervor that was happening Monday evening and Tuesday morning, I felt that if I was at the function, the boards and commissions event, I would be the center of attention. I didn't know if that was going to happen, but if I had attended from the beginning, I did show up at the end to just thank everybody, so I did get a couple of words in. But if I was there at the beginning and everyone started showing up, I would have taken focus. And I think there was a part of me that simply didn't want to test those waters yet. And in fact, for the rest of the week, I ended up passing a lot of my public functions over to the vice mayor, because I also didn't want any event that I went to in my official capacity to again be overtaken or overshadowed by this story. It was a choice that I made. I don't know if I would have made it again, but I used the best judgment I had at the time. Um, I did make it to the end, so I did end up doing the closing thank yous.
So, with you not being there, like you say, that was a personal decision on your part,
Right.
because of the outcry and what was kind of expecting,
Mhm.
which would distract from
Yeah, and
the purpose of the event.
I'll say this: when I did show up towards the end, I did get a lot of looks and I did get a lot of comments. And so I feel comfortable thinking that it was the right
Well,
decision.
everybody's going to judge.
Yeah.
That's human nature. Everybody's going to judge, and you have a lot of very conservative people on those boards and commissions, and I understand that. But I still got to be honest with you. The apology thing still has me a little bit. Now, I don't think you should apologize for what you do, but I think you should, to the point that it brought a negative light to Burbank. I don't think you should apologize for doing what you did, because I think you did what, and you explained why. But I still think you still owe the citizens here a little bit of, I'm sorry that the blowback came onto our city.
I know.
Yeah, I can live with that, but I just think we need something that says, hey, you know what? I did not calculate that this would be such a huge thing and blow back into Burbank the way it did and affect the Burbank citizens the way it has, and kind of put a negative spotlight onto Burbank in some ways. I mean, that's kind of what I was looking for a little bit. Tell you the truth, very honestly.
I get that. I get that.
Craig's talking as a lifelong, literally lifelong
No, I know.
Burbank
Yeah,
resident.
both Ross and I are
We are
lifelong.
both lifelong Burbank. We know the city pretty darn every alley and so forth.
I completely understand where you're coming from. I think the issue that I am trying to struggle with is, why is it a negative light? Why do we as a city feel bad that this happened? And I want to just go back to, I'm not a member of the LGBTQ community. So I don't know how this looks and feels for them. When we get this kind of light shined on us and we feel bad for it having happened, is it an internal thing for us to actually think that it was bad, or simply because other people are telling us that it's bad? And the negative light, the all the bad things that came from this, from the thing that I did, to the things that were shared, to the spread that it happened. If we lived in a tolerant society, nobody would care. Nobody would have thought twice about it. Nobody would have shared it on social media. Nobody would have emailed us. And so I struggle with the understanding that, yes, many residents feel that something negative happened. But I challenge everyone to look at their maybe even unconscious bias towards what they saw on the video and how they perceived that as a negative thing. Regardless of, the role of the mayor, if we remove that for just a second and then look at the thing that happened, if we're okay, if we can, look inside ourselves and think, okay, it's fine, it's just a playful thing, I'm not concerned with the fact that it was a man dressed as a woman spanking another man, I can get past that. Okay, if I'm okay with that silliness, now let's bring in the position, an elected official, the mayor of a city. Is there a leeway that I can understand that some mayors may be a little silly and participate in something that, just prior to this, I have accepted as totally fine? And once we make that leap in our minds and in our society in general, I think we can get past the negativity. And so I'll come all the way back to the statement that I made earlier about how I don't want to apologize for this. I am specifically refusing to do that because I want people to challenge their understanding of it. If there's a way to do that, I'm trying to find it. And that's where I'm at. I'm stuck in that limbo right now.
It's perceptions, it's observations, it's all those things. I understand that, and I appreciate what you're saying. I may not agree with it personally, but I do appreciate your viewpoint of what you're saying and how you're saying it, because it does. There is some truth to it, absolutely. But once again, observations, perceptions, and all that kind of thing, and
Yeah.
you're never going to change that with people. It's like you're never going to change, racism or anything else. It's people are going to believe what they believe, and there's not much you can do about that.
Well, in our community, and I'm, hearing from people, there are a lot of kids that are not sure about coming out and being part of and admitting they're LGBTQ. And I'm finding what I hear, their parents are wrestling with it. The kids are so close to coming out, but they're afraid to. And something like this, they see this and they go, "What's wrong with it? What did he do wrong?" And I know the YMCA's center, they're having a ton of people and dealing with these kids that want to come out, but they're afraid to. And in this city of Burbank, because of how we're so conservative.
I think it's just about anywhere.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, I think in Southern California, there's probably more chance they would compared to the Midwest. I think in the Midwest, they're probably more scared, if anything, where it's more conservative and the more of a bias.
And you look West Hollywood, this wouldn't even have ruffled any feathers. And that's what, it's a sign of our times. And how do we I don't want to say just move on, drop it under the carpet, but how do we learn from it?
Well,
And
let me get to the next question here. And that is, during the meeting, council members Lizette Mullins asked for an agenda item to be brought back at a later time involving the conduct of the mayor. How do you feel about that? And what do you think is going to be the result of that?
I mean, I'm more than willing to talk about that. I don't have a problem with the agenda item. We've been talking about what it is to be a mayor in Burbank for a long time now. The selection process, the possibility of a directly elected mayor. We don't have a strong mayor council government. We have a council manager government. So the mayor is in Burbank just a figurehead. You gavel in and out of the meetings.
and you know how many people don't understand that. You and I go to how many ribbon cuttings, and people go, "The mayor's coming," and their eyes get big. And in Los Angeles, I go to things with their mayor, with the police escort and everything
Right,
else.
right.
It's a little bit different here, that ceremonial position.
And historically there have been mayors who are very good at utilizing that ceremonial position to push for things that the city needs, to fight for the rights of the citizens in a way that maybe a prior or subsequent mayor isn't. And again, it comes down to personality. Jess Talamantes historically was a big force mayor. He was mayor 3 times. And everybody talks about his influence and power simply when he gets rotated in. And it's only for a year. But, there were certain people that knew how to use that bully pulpit to really push for things that we needed. And I'm a loud voice in the room anywhere I go, even before I was the mayor. And so I have taken great care to understand that, yeah, you're right. People see it as a little differently. I try not to abuse that authority and that power. But I'm hoping the things that I talk about, the things that I do, the way I treat the office is a more inclusive style. And I have to point out, I'm 42. I'm a whole generation away from most of the people who are criticizing me for this action. I think there's something to be said about what you're saying about parents and kids and thinking, well, what's wrong with it and why aren't we doing it? I grew up in a time where, I had very different presidents growing up than you guys had growing up, Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton, at least for the first few years, were very much by the book. And that changed, towards the end of the Clinton presidency and a lot of the things George W. Bush did. And even Obama was very different in his demeanor and the jokes he would tell and the bits he would do with Joe Biden. I mean, it was a very different, and then you get into Trump and all bets are off. So I come up from a very different understanding of politicians and what they should and shouldn't do. And I don't want to say it's just a generational thing, but I think there's a component there that can't be ignored. I don't know.
Well, I'll say this. We've talked about in our weekly shows that I like the tone of the council, how it's changed since the new 5 members are there. I think we were very kind of stale before. I think it's probably in our national politics too, is that they say now the age of the national politician is higher than it's ever been before. And I don't know how well they relate to today's society and what's going on. Now, I know as a council, you guys many times now, you just don't take the staff's word for things. You actually look into things. You change things around. You throw some wild cards at them. We like that. We don't want a rubber stamp on things that a staff member who might be here for 2 years in a job and wants to change the world, and then we do something, and then they leave to go to some other city. We're the ones who live here. We have to deal with this forever. So I think you guys, I like the tone that you guys have said in the meeting. So I mean, I agree with what you're saying. I think we have to have, a new perspective on things sometimes, and the old council was, they're all respectful people and everything else, but I just don't think they knew what was going on in the real world at times.
And it's funny you say that. I just wanted to interject what I saw a comment on Twitter today. That what you wear around Washington now can be a T-shirt and shorts. Did you see that comment from Senator Majority Leader, who the last I think you would see that from? But we always say the chambers is a place of decorum. But nowadays the decorum is shorts and a nice shirt.
I mean, there's the guy who just got voted in, Senator Fetterman from Pennsylvania, historically was known to wear a hoodie and shorts and flip-flops, and they love him over there.
Yeah, here's my guy. Trust me, that's my wardrobe.
Man of the people.
I have a quick question for you, and I wrote it down here. People are pulling, like you say, now on social media. They can go back to probably when you were born and get a quote or so forth. They're playing tapes or reading stuff that you have on our show, your mayor's show here, said, like defunding the police.
Right.
When you say defunding the police, it's their conception. $2 million for the animal shelter got moved to the Parks and Rec.
Right.
You're not taking that money from the police, but that fund is the funding.
Yeah. The police were budgeted $2 million to run the animal shelter, and now they're not going to run it, so they don't need the $2 million anymore.
But what is your
I mean, we did a bunch of stuff. We fixed the workers' comp issue was way overpriced. We fixed the overtime issue, which we were paying out through the nose on overtime because we weren't, scheduling our officers correctly. So, like, saving money is reducing the budget. And we didn't lose a single uniform officer, and we actually made response times faster. So,
Yeah, you're not looking to reduce the force. You're not looking to reduce the programs. If anything, is use some of that money for mental health programs, things like that.
Yeah.
That new Met team and things like that need to be done.
And what cracks me up on the internet and my flooded inbox, people keep asking me, how did you get elected? I'm going to tell everyone that you're a defund the police candidate. And I'm like, I ran on that. What are you talking about? Like, I was very open and transparent.
The problem is the word defund means
I know.
No funding compared to
I know.
It should be refund. In a way. I'm not sure. Or
Yeah.
I don't know what you'd call it, but I think it's been blown out of proportion. That defund.
I know. It's so funny to me because I have very progressive politics. But at the end of the day, there's 5 council members, and we all have to find consensus. And we're still working within the framework of the current system that we have. We can't make radical changes. It's, would be impossible with staff time to try to change everything.
Well, Burbank being a very older bedroom community, those older people are still concerned.
I know.
When you go to the market or the pharmacy, you see a police officer driving by. And they're afraid of losing that.
No.
Why a lot of people live here. Well, Craig, you wanted to move on.
Let's move on a little farther. So my question is, what has the fallout been for you, both politically and personally, since this happened?
So there's a handful, maybe 4 or 5 individuals who I didn't agree with politically, but I still considered a friend that I could talk to, that we could debate the issues on, not see eye to eye, but still, be cordial and see at functions and events around town, and I could get their help on stuff. Hey, I want to move forward on this thing that we do agree on. Can you help me out? So I partner with people from all over the political spectrum to work on local issues and help people and do direct influence that way. Handful of those folks have made it very clear that they don't want to be my friend anymore, which is disappointing. I don't think that's my fault. I did everything I could to reach out and explain the situation. That's the best I could do. I'm hoping that my conduct moving forward, will bring them around. Very good at forgiving people. I don't hold a grudge. They want to come back around and say, "Hey, maybe I acted too harshly." I don't care. I like people. I don't want to be mad at anybody. I don't want them to be mad at me. So there has been some fallout there. Politically, I mean, this is exactly in line with every single public stance I've ever taken. You can go back through all of my social media. There's no hesitation on any of these issues when I talk about it. I don't know. I'm very open and honest about what I believe in. There's like this undertone to some of the comments that I get from people who aren't from Burbank, like I somehow deceived people to get into office, like I was somehow crafty and lying, and I'm like, I'm really not. I'm just, I don't know. I don't hide anything. I think that's what is shocking to people. I don't, if I see a problem, I jump into the fray and say, this is what we need to do, and this is how we fix it, and I'm very much in favor of this. And I've had friends, politically minded friends, who are like, whoa, you can't just say you're pro this or anti that. You gotta put your toe in the water and gauge the temperature. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. I know what's right and wrong. I'm getting into it. And if I if I lose a friend, fine. But it's not worth it to me to try to, I don't know, placate people or not be proactive. It's just not who I am.
At the end of the day, you have to be true to yourself.
I have to, and I always am, and I think that rubs people the wrong way sometimes.
I've been through it before as a coach too. I understand that. Is there anything you'd like everyone to know about this, and how do you want to move on from here? Anything else you want to say about this, and
Yeah.
how you want to keep going here?
I would encourage anyone in the community who's listening to this and thinks I'm totally nuts, reach out to me. Talk to me. Most of the people who know me, even people who disagree with me politically, they saw me do this and they're like, yeah, that's on brand. That's Konstantine. Could have guessed that. And they don't agree with it, and they might be a little upset with me, but it's not a surprise. But to those listening in and to the people who were shocked by it, who suddenly had it emailed to them or texted to them, reach out to me. I will tell you all about all the wacky things I've done in my life. I am a very, I can't explain it any other way, a very silly person. My father was a total goofball. I don't know if it's genetic or what, but, I was a comedian for 20 years. 20 years. I'm professionally trained as a clown and a mime. So, if I see some silly stuff happening, I'm gonna jump in. I'm gonna jump in, and I don't know if that's a lack of a filter or just my natural need to be silly. But I have never in my life taken what I do or who I am seriously. But I always will respect what other people consider serious. And so that's why I will say again, when I'm on the clock, when I'm gaveling in, when I'm running a meeting, when I'm doing a ribbon cutting, when I'm hosting any event or giving a presentation, I know that perception. I know when there's a place and a time to be silly, and I know when there's a place and time to be serious. I know that difference. And people have commended me in the work that I do when I'm serious. All I ask is, give me a little bit of leeway when it's time to be silly, because I might be a little bit more silly than you think I am. So that's where I'm at.
All right, but my last question is so we're looking at long range now. You're running for county supervisor, and if you do not, get elected, you're still a Burbank City Council member. Term expires in 2024. You plan on seeking re-election. What's your future plans?
I think that may have to be decided after the supervisor's race. There is a big, huge district that I'm running right now. 2 million Americans, District 5, and it is it's a very pro LGBTQ district that I'm running in. So I think my specific brand of politics may be exactly what the district is looking for in March of 2024. And if not, I'll see how much of my original agenda I ran on has gotten passed. I campaigned with very specific policy ideas in 2020. I want to see us open the homeless shelter. I've been yelling about that for years. I want to see what we do with tenant protections. I want to see what we do with a gun control ordinance and a zoning for the gun stores. I'm going to be working on all this stuff, and we've passed a bunch of incredible, historic legislation that no city council has ever passed before under my gavel. And I'll challenge anybody to point out that I'm not doing the job well. Doing the job very effectively. So we'll see how much I get done in my first term, and if I'm satisfied, I'm satisfied. If I feel there's more work to be done, I may seek re-election. We'll see what new challenges bring us in 2024, and we'll take it from there.
Well, we're going to bring you back in January, and we're going to do a podcast about your county, running for county.
We'll bring you back before that. But
well, yeah, you can always have your Ask the Mayor show. But I'm just saying,
Yes.
in January we'll do a podcast dedicated to your campaign
Right.
and your views and opinions and what you'd like to see done and get your word out there. So this was not the format for that today, but
I have one last quick question.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
You're newly married,
Yes.
and I know Margot quite well, pretty good, and
I know what you're going to ask.
you already. How does she? Yeah.
She told me, she said, this is exactly why I married you.
Okay. Well, that
We met, our first date was at the comedy club that I worked at. So she knows who I am.
you guys have been together for a long time, and
Yeah.
when you're a spouse of a politician, you see it all. You have to do it all. You're the first lady or first person, and it's so okay. That
Well, I'm going to say this. Thank you so much for coming on and talking with us. You're very honest. I mean, I agree 100%, but I really appreciate your opinion and what you stand firm in what you believe. And I think that's gives you a lot of credit also. It's the fact you're not wishy-washy or something. You're taking responsibility for your actions. And I think that's important. But I appreciate coming on and giving those opinions and giving your insight into what happened, because there are a lot of questions out there and a lot of misinformation, and that's what I want to really is get out the information out of the air.
we get
factual.
we run a program, TweetDeck, and I'll tell you, we have gotten a barrage, and we see what a lot of other people are putting out there.
And it's just not true.
It's
just,
right.
Yeah, it's and people we have their little code name and in their keyboard and sit somewhere in a basement and attack people, and look them in the eye if you're going to say something to them. That's what I always
you have your critics. They get up quite a bit on Tuesday, but also every other, I've been around since Jim Richmond, since who was the other one we were talking about? Ted McConkey.
Ted McConkey, yeah, and even David Gordon.
Susan Spanos, who just passed away. I know we've seen a ton of. You're only there in that seat for so long. You can't ruin our city. People think about it. The sun will come up tomorrow.
We'll be okay. And last thing I want to say is I had a number of media outlets try to do an on-air interview with me. And I told myself I needed to do a show with Craig because you guys are fair and you have shown me the respect that I think good journalism needs in this country. And I didn't want to disrespect you in that manner because I felt like this was a very Burbank issue. So I wanted to come on specifically.
I know Craig was a little worried when he didn't hear from you from a couple days, but like you said, you had to take a breath of fresh air. You had to step back, and I know him being a coach for many, many years. He wants a play to keep moving fast, and sometimes you just have to take. But we both appreciate coming in and sitting down with us, and like I said, thank you.
Okay, well. That's Mayor Konstantine Anthony, and for Ross Benson, is Craig Sherwood. Thank you for listening to another edition of My Burbank Talks Issues, and we will talk to you later. Goodbye.
My Burbank Talks would like to thank all of My Burbank's advertisers for their continued support. Burbank Water and Power, Cusimano Real Estate Group, Providence St. Joseph Medical Center, Burbank Chamber of Commerce, UME Credit Union, Tequila's Cantina and Grill, UCLA Health, Gain Credit Union, Community Chevrolet, Media City Credit Union, Eric Garcia of Farmers Insurance, Providence High School, UPS Store on 3rd Street, and Hill Street Cafe.